Everyone, thank you so much for joining us again for our weekly virtual town hall. This week, well, and first, again, I always want to say that my thoughts are with those of you and our entire communities as we're continuing to suffer through this both health as well as financial crisis, right? And so we will get through this, and I'm very glad to be joined today by one of the leaders in our own community that is helping make that happen for folks. So today we're joined by the president and CEO of LiftFund, Ms. Janie Barrera, as well as the Chief Advancement Officer, Celina Peña. And again, they are with LiftFund, which is a nonprofit based here in San Antonio, but they operate all throughout Texas and to include several other states. They provide an invaluable resource. When you look at their 25-year history, that's 300 million loans that have been provided to small businesses and entrepreneurs. And we'll get into a little bit. I think that number is actually much higher, just given the work that they've been doing with the PPP program. But just to give you a sense of the work that they do, you know, in 2018, they issued $32 million in opportunity capital. These are loans to small businesses and entrepreneurs. The average loan was $28,000. This was 1,100, again, small businesses and entrepreneurs that they were able to help. When you also look at the demographics, 10% of these folks were veterans, 65% of these folks were considered low or moderate income. So, you know, LiftFund is not a bank, it is a community financial development institution, and they're going to explain how that differs from a bank. But their real purpose is, again, to help those communities like women, minorities, those that traditionally have a hard time accessing this capital to get started. And, you know, look, in a city like San Antonio, my hometown, a wonderful city, but unfortunately suffers from high rates of poverty and economic segregation. It's institutions like LiftFund that play such a big part in making sure that, we are investing in talent all throughout our community. They've done such amazing work. Janie and Celina are going to talk about the work that they've done to get some of this relief assistance through the PPP program into our small businesses. Again, the engine of our economy. And unfortunately, so many have really borne the brunt of what's happening here. So really look forward to your comments, ladies, and of course, thank you for your leadership every single day. I know this has been a stressful time, and you all are working around the clock to get relief assistance into the hands that need it most. So thank you. We've got questions from all across this community, and this is a district from San Antonio all the way to El Paso. It's actually larger than 30 states. 800 miles of border. So I know you have clients and partnerships all throughout this district. And so we've got questions from all across. I think some folks though did just want help clarifying, Janie or Celina, how is a community development and financial institution different from a bank? What can you do versus a bank? What can't you do that a bank can do, for example?
Well, Gina, thank you very much for this opportunity for Celina and I to share some information, because as you stated at the opening, there are so many people and families hurting. And so what we need to do is help and provide that information. And in the small business community, I've heard too that people are scared. They don't know what to apply for and how to apply for it. And so Celina and I hopefully can answer some of these questions so that people feel comfortable in moving forward. So the difference, Gina, between a CDFI like ourselves, a not-for-profit organization, and a bank is just that we are a not-for-profit organization, and we do not have depositors. And the way the banking system works, we put our money into banks or credit unions, and they use that money to be able to then to make loans. And that's how the cycle works in the banking industry. In the not-for-profit CDFI world, community development financial institution world, we don't have deposits. So we have to rely on investments and donations to be able to do this work. Gina pointed out, we've been doing this for, this is our 26th year. We celebrated 25 years last year. And so we've been doing it very well. Actually, in the last 6 weeks, Gina pointed out that we did almost 30 million in 2018. Well, guess what? Because of the PPP loan and the COVID kinds of work that we've been doing, we've actually, in the last 6 weeks, put out over 21 million in 6 weeks. almost 800 loans because of the need that is out there. And our team is not stopping, and I'm hoping that we can encourage you all to apply, because there's still PPP dollars available. So that's quickly the general way that the difference, Gina, between a bank and a CDFI. But maybe Celina could share with you some of the examples of people that have gotten PPP loans in our community. So that way we can give a flavor for that and then jump back into your questions, Gina.
Sure. Thank you so much for having us. You know, when you think about PPP, just from whether it's the news, whether you've heard it stop or start, we've had folks who are contractors, so 1099s. We also have had self-employed individuals, and we've had mom and pop shops ranging from 3 to 5 employees to some businesses having 20 employees. And what's important for everyone to understand is, as LiftFund is a nonprofit, we actually will take time and provide you some support and guidance as it relates to sizing the PPP loan specifically for your needs. And we've done loans as small as $2,500 for the PPP. And it's important to understand that if you have hesitation, there are formulas to help us understand how we can help. And the beauty of the program as it relates to small businesses being the economic engines of our communities is that if we document everything, it actually becomes a forgivable loan. And so thinking about where you're at today and the uncertainty, the PPP can play a role for you as a contractor. So this is, again, if you're actually a salesperson and doing 1099s, we can actually help you. If you are a small firm or a self-employed firm doing marketing, we can help you. And we can help the small restaurants as well in terms of being able to think through what does the PPP do to help businesses like that.
Wonderful. Thank you for going over that. And they are actually, so LiftFund is going to do a training Monday, 2 p.m. for folks that are still interested in accessing the second round of PPP funding. And so we'll share that in our Zoom comments as well as on the Facebook page. And then at the end, if you want to spend just a little bit of time kind of talking about what folks can expect during that training, I think that'd be great. Can you talk a little bit about, because you're providing such an important function now in connecting people to PPP relief assistance. What about the work that you were doing before this, right? So can you give us a sense of kind of how your division, your efforts have changed just in light of having to get the PPP money out as quickly as is needed?
Yeah, I'm chuckling because the work 7-8 weeks ago is totally different than the work right now. The work in the past has been people have great ideas. It's our motto is dream it, fund it. And so people would come to us wanting access to capital, working capital, and so on. That has totally changed. At this point, LiftFund is not focused on helping startups unless it's truly related to COVID, and you can help us get a virus, get a cure for the virus. Okay, let's talk about it. But right now, what we're really focusing on is the sustainability of the present businesses that we have. Mm-hmm. How do we keep you open? If you've been closed, how do we help you open back up? That's our focus right now.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit kind of around PPP, but this is, we've seen the first round of that assistance come and go very, very quickly. But can you tell folks a little bit about, how this second round of PPP might be different than the first, so they can manage their expectations about, whether or not they might be able to qualify for it?
Sure. So the first round of the PPP program basically was run by the banks. The SBA said to the banks, here's these dollars, put out and see what, have people apply. And as you all read all the articles, it was mostly people that had a bank accounts and so on. So it took a series of weeks, but by week I think it was like 3 or 4 of the first tranche of PPP, CDFIs, nonprofits, were allowed to participate. And so during that very first round, LiftFund was able to start offering the PPP loans. And we were only in operation 3 days and the spigot was turned off. So we therefore only did that first round. I believe it was 7 or 8 loans valuing, maybe 9 loans valuing less than $800,000. Okay, now fast forward this round. There are certain dollars that are set in place for CDFIs to use. So the banks have their chunk and we have our chunk. And that's why we have still CDFI, we still have PPP money right now available. And it's not only for small businesses, it's for not-for-profits as well. Okay. So if you are not-for-profit and you have been keeping payroll documentation on your employees, please go into our website. Celina, I believe, do we still have the PPP or do we have to give them direct links?
No, we have it. It's up. Our PPP.
It's up and running? Okay.
Yes.
So if you are not-for-profit and you have not applied for a PPP somewhere else, please go to our website, Lift, L-I-F-T, not L-Y-F-T, fund.com. And even though we're not-for-profit, it's .com. Don't ask me why. Ask Celina if you want to. She's a techie person. And apply. And what it does is you look at your salaries that you've had, and then we're going to by month look at it, and then you do times 2.5 times, and that's how much you're eligible. So so just underscore, not for profits, for profits, sole proprietorships, LLCs. All of you all are eligible. People have come to me and said, hey, I don't have any employees. I just work for myself. Guess what? You're an employee. You are able to apply for these PPP loans. And we haven't talked about that. We say it's a loan, but it's a forgivable loan. So you apply, you get the dollars. 75% of your loan amount has to be used for salaries. 25% can be used for utilities, can be used for rent, and or mortgages, and can be used for interest on other loans. So after 8 weeks of you having this loan, we will require you to submit to us documentation that you have used at least a minimum of 75% towards or salary, could be 100% if you want. And then submit the information to us, we submit it to SBA, and that loan is forgiven. So can you imagine getting a $5,000 loan or a $10,000 loan, but it's going to be forgiven, so it turns into a grant. So it's a wonderful product, and people should not be afraid of it.
When you talk about it, it is a wonderful opportunity, and unfortunately, one of the reasons we're even having this conversation is because we know not everyone can easily find this information or knows about wonderful institutions like the LiftFund. So can you talk a little bit about your outreach to the communities that you are targeting to serve and are currently underserved maybe by our traditional banking system?
Sure, Celina, you're the expert on this. You're the one that actually drives that bus. You want to talk about it?
Sure. Yeah, no, I think as you reflected on our 26 years, I think one of the things CDFIs are grounded in is serving underserved communities. And no one thinks of themselves as underserved, right? But if you think about a pathway, you want someone who will guide you and help you and not judge, right? And LiftFund has been built on a mission and a passion to make sure that we are ears open and eyes wide open and providing guidance as well. So when we think about who we serve, just within the past 6 weeks, as I mentioned, we've got really small deals, and we've got our average size is $30,000 for a PPP compared to what you've heard in the news, which is like millions of dollars, right? And this is representative of 40% women, which is very important to us. As Janie reflected, anywhere from 8 to 10% veterans are in this population as well. And then for the diversity, we're seeing anywhere from 75 to 80% of entrepreneurs of color participating. And that is because we didn't just turn the spigot on 6 weeks ago. It's because we've been doing this for 26 years. And we do have support services. So if someone is hesitant, we actually have team members dedicated to doing counseling and to helping people think through, what does debt look like for me? What does a business pivot look like for me? And providing that type of guidance as well. So when we think about, what are the pathways for opportunity specifically for small businesses, banks play a role, and so do CDFIs. And being on this call, right, in terms of like, how do we reach the smallest of the small, is just as important as reaching the mid-size and the bigger small businesses as well.
Absolutely. Because, they were at one point small, right? Before they became the medium size and larger ones. We've got some questions that are coming in via Zoom, and they're pertinent to what you're just talking about. So Carmen has a question: is the loan taxed when it's forgiven?
Yes. Gosh, I've not been asked that question before. Is the loan taxed?
If it is forgiven, it would be.
Sorry, say that again.
If it's forgiven, there is a tax form that would come with that forgiveness. Yes.
Okay. So does that mean it's not taxed, or it is taxed?
It is taxed. Yes.
It's taxed. Okay.
The and your comments about who you've helped. One of the kind of general pieces of feedback that I've heard as I've talked to community leaders, elected officials in our rural areas in particular, has been the challenge that their community members have had in accessing this capital because they either didn't have a relationship with their rural bank, as well as those banks in our rural communities were not able to as quickly access the capital as some of these larger banks. And so can you talk a little bit about how that affected LiftFund and the loans that you've provided via PPP? Have those been to existing, have those primarily been to some of your existing clients?
Well, Gina, I'm so glad you're having this dialogue, even though it's virtual, because what we want to do is reach the rural communities. As a not-for-profit organization, it's not that we have marketing dollars or massive, dollars to be able to do that outreach. So the people that are listening to us today, I hope they can reach out to the people that you work with, Gina. Sure. So let's invite them and tell them that this is available to them, and LiftFund is here to hold their hand as they apply, to not be afraid on taking that step, because it's not. I know if you're not dealing with financials all the time, it can be kind of scary. But if we can look at just, giving a call, those of folks that maybe are sole proprietors and they do a Schedule C, for example. Either they do the Schedule C or they have a bookkeeper that does the Schedule C. Go to your Schedule C, people that are listening, right? And look and look at line 31 on that Schedule C. Look at that number. Take that number, divide it by 12, and then times 2.5. That's how much money you are eligible to receive from the federal government in this PPP program, if you're a sole proprietor. I mean, that's an easy formula. So those of us who are not, I have to always use my Excel spreadsheet to add things up because I can't do it in my head like some people can. But that's a very simple way of looking at what could be coming to me from this PPP program. So again, Schedule C, line 31, take that number, divide it by 12, times 2.5. That's it. And then give us a call. If it's more than, my advice would be, if it's more than $500, call us. I mean, that's free money that you're going to be able to get. But that being said, the rules are that you have to use it for payroll, 75% for payroll, 25% for these other things called mortgage, rent, utilities, and interest on other loans. If you're not going to be able to provide that data to us in the next 8 weeks, because we're going to require that you submit that paperwork, then don't apply, because then it's going to turn into a term loan for 2 years. and then that term loan for 2 years at 1% interest, which you may think, oh, that's no big deal. It's only 1% interest. Yes, it is a big deal because it's a 2-year term. That doesn't mean,
Yeah.
it means that there's a select time that you have to pay it back, right? It's not like a car payment that's 5 years or, whatever that they stretch it out to. So those are the kinds of things that I'm sharing with you because that's our folks that you call and want information from. They're going to tell you the same thing. Just like I'm walking you through this, they're going to do it even better because that's what they do full time.
As folks are, and you're highlighting a lot of things that help you manage folks' expectations. What are the kind of the most common things that have come up that have unfortunately prevented people from qualifying for the PPP?
Yeah, what was very unfortunate to my experience that I was calling on people was that this person was delinquent on her student loans. Mm-hmm. That's one of the that's one of the rules, that if you are delinquent on taxes or on student loans, any federal program that's out there that you kind of slowed on it, we're not going to be able to help you. That's
is this like one missed payment or like or?
No, I mean, if you're delinquent, period. I mean, if it shows on your credit report as delinquent,
got it.
Anything related to federal or taxes.
Okay.
It's yeah, that's one thing. The other thing is going to be, and it's because again, it's a federal, it's not LiftFund, because LiftFund does help formerly incarcerated folks, right? But in this program, if you have a record in the last 5 years, you're not eligible for it either.
Okay.
At the federal level.
At the federal level, at the PPP level. Again, we haven't talked about the fact that LiftFund in your area that you serve has other programs available through municipalities for loan programs.
Okay. I've been reaching out and there's nothing like hearing from folks on the ground, right, and what they're doing. And so I was actually just speaking with a woman in El Paso that is part of that the economic development office within the city, and they were talking about $2 million that they've been able to put out via the LiftFund. So I mean, it's wonderful to hear the work that y'all are doing, especially in this critical time, and especially as our cities and municipalities are hurt so much and are really trying to do the best that they can.
Thank you. Yeah, that's right. We do serve. We have a wonderful team in El Paso that does our work there, and that $2 million actually came from city and county dollars that they provided us. Remember, because we're not a bank, so we have to use outside dollars to provide the service. So we're very grateful for the city and county of El Paso.
This is so important, this public-private partnership. Have you, and I, frankly, as somebody, again, that wants to serve at the federal level, you've got to know what the ROI is on these things so you can make a better case for why we need to invest in our most vulnerable, because they could also be our most promising, right? So have you seen that number, right? Every dollar given to you, maybe by the city or the county, what has that meant in terms of ROI? It's very important to know, right? Because people that either donate or invest in LiftFund, where does that dollar go? One cool thing about our not-for-profit is that we can tell you exactly where it goes. We can, Celina's in charge of our website. So you can actually go on the website and click in terms of clients and see where the clients are located in El Paso or, San Antonio or whatever, and see the actual business that has benefited from a LiftFund loan. And then also what it does for their families. Because what we're doing is helping people transform their lives. Yeah. So for every dollar that LiftFund puts out in a loan in our state, we get a $14 return rate. There's a return of investment of $14. And how does that happen? Well, it's because we inject through a loan to a small business person dollars. That person uses those monies to be able then to purchase widgets for their business to sell. And then they also are putting gas in the car. I'm sorry. Which they pay taxes. Right?
Exactly. Then they put gas in their car. It helps the gas companies. If they buy tires, they buy food. You know, one of the things that we've learned over time is that we help people put together their financials. You know, people in small business don't realize that they've got to keep good records. And so they'll buy something or they'll get paid. For a lot of people in the cash industry, in cash economy, they get something because somebody paid them, they put it in their pocket, then they go to the store and they buy milk and eggs and bread and take it home. And then they don't realize, well, what did I make today? Because they didn't keep track of that kind of stuff. So that's a lot of the education that we do as well, is help people track where they're using their funds.
So there's another relief program that we got into questions about and wanted to see if LiftFund was also involved in. It's the Economic Injury Disaster Loan. And we've seen that one doesn't have nearly, it sounds like, the amount of funds that are needed for the demand. But can you help folks understand what the difference is between that program versus PPP, and if you all are working to help people access that?
That program is directly with SBA. So you've got to go on their website and apply directly with them.
Okay.
We are an intermediary. We work with SBA, and so that's why we're able to provide these PPP loans. In this particular product, it's the SBA that's providing it directly with the consumer, with the borrower. Okay. And my understanding, I don't know, Celina, if you know a little bit more than I do, but my little bit that I know is that it is for emergency related to COVID. I don't know if there's minimums or maximums. Do you know, Celina?
Well, there's within the EIDL program, you have a section that shows income and revenue, and then the formula happens on their application.
Okay.
We actually just got another good question via Zoom from Carmen, and I think we'll ask both for your regular programs as well as for the PPP. Well, I think actually we know for PPP, but for your traditional opportunity loans, do applicants have to be American citizens?
Yeah. For the PPP loans, yes. For our regular programs that we may have with me, like El Paso or other places, no. You do have to have either a I-10 number, driver's license, matriculation, and one other thing I'm missing, Celina.
The EIN number.
EIN.
As well. Mm-hmm.
We actually had this question come in related to, again, the types of assistance that are available. You talked about how the PPP is able to help folks if they're able to show that they can keep people on payroll. For folks that unfortunately, have not been able to stay open during this time and have recently shut down. But if they could demonstrate that they could quickly rehire folks, and could they then qualify for the second round of PPP funding?
Yes, they are eligible. The only thing I'm going to tell those folks, though, is be absolutely sure that you're going to be hired. It doesn't necessarily be the same people you had, but you have to be absolutely sure that you're going to hire people to the amount that you're getting on that loan. Because if you cannot prove that by payroll, by check stubs or whatever that you use to pay these people that you're rehiring or hiring from scratch, it's making a difference. The body that the person, the soul that's there helping you. We have to have a documentation that you've actually done that for 8 weeks after you got the loan. So if you're going to apply and you're going to open up again and you're going to hire people, be ready to start paying these people when you get the loan.
Right.
If not, it's going to go into a term loan. Like we talked about earlier, we don't want it to go to a term loan.
And it sounds like they have to be also pretty sure that they can do it for 8 weeks.
That's right. You have to keep them for 8 weeks.
Okay. So we are coming up on the end of our time here, and I definitely want to give you ladies, thank you again for this very informative discussion. And we've got wonderful questions from folks joining us via Zoom and Facebook. Can you talk a little bit about what you're going to be offering folks, what they'll be able to, the information that you'll be providing on Monday, 2 p.m., your training session?
Sure. That session is going to be about an hour in length, and we are going to do step by step. You want to apply, this is what you have to do, and we'll be taking questions. If you have, what do I do on this situation and so on, it'll be an hour-long session on how to apply with actually an expert that is doing this day in and day out. I'll be there like an MC, but really Dalia Garcia, who does the PPP program, will be working with you to fill out the applications and so on.
And how will they register for this session?
Celina.
Sure. Yeah, we actually have a Zoom, and I think we posted it in the chat earlier.
Great.
Yep. So at 6:39, you can see in the chat for registration, and you can share that with others as well.
Wonderful. Well, good. Well, thank you so much. Again, ladies, I wanted to, this has been very, very helpful, especially as so many of our community members are struggling and with so much uncertainty. It's wonderful to hear about the work that you're doing. It sounds like round the clock to make sure that our communities can get through this as financially sound as possible. This is, when I think about the type of things that I would work on, I'm always, I always think about economic security. I mean, my entire career has been in national security, but there's no national security without economic security. And many of the countries that I worked in, whether they be in Africa or the Middle East, one thing that was always immediately apparent was the lack of a middle class. And so when I think about the work that LiftFund does, it's not just issuing loans, right? They talked about every dollar invested in them, invested through them is $14 in return. And so that just goes to, again, strengthening our middle class, strengthening working families. Unfortunately, we're seeing now what happens when there isn't sufficient investment and when folks don't have access to that capital that is so necessary. And so this has been, I think, eye-opening for many folks, and I think good to hear that there's still help available. And as we think about the decision that we all have to make, right, just in less than 6 months about the types of representatives that are going to be fighting for certainly the assistance that's needed now, but the long-term economic recovery that is certainly going to need to be of top priority, and making sure that communities, exactly like the ones that LiftFund currently serves, are prioritized and are not left further and further behind. I look forward to doing that. Celina, Janie, thank you so much for today and for the work that you do every single day. And thank you for joining us for our 7th virtual town hall. And I would, my public service announcement, we just lost today, or rather since yesterday, 58 Texans. 58 Texans. This has, been unfortunately the largest number of lives lost since this started for us. 116, it looks like, Texans just in the last 3 days that we lost. So, please continue to stay safe, stay healthy, and please stay home as much as possible. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next week. Take care.
Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Sharon.